As a reminder to all participants, please turn your phones to silent throughout the sessions. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the conference is about to begin.
Good morning. Welcome to Bandung. Welcome to the 12th Bandung International Conference on Language Education, Active and Autonomous Learning for Millennial Generation, Kids Zaman Now. First of all, I'd like to give a warm welcome to participants who have come all the way from other countries, also from all over Indonesia. Welcome all. To begin with, I would like to invite Ibu Untari Gunta Pertiwi MPD from ITB Language Center as the conference manager to give report.
Good morning, everyone. Your Majesty, Education Directors of ITB, Bapak Dr. Yuli Setio Indartono, BC Directors, Mr. Paul Smith, OBE, Representative of University of Leeds, Martin Lambs, and Bapak Howell Coleman, Presidents of Asia TEFO, Bapak Profesor Dr. Fuad Abdul Hamid, Plenary Moderators, Profesor Setiawan, Profesor Ismunanda, Profesor Hendra Gunawan, and Dr. Bandar Kartasasmita, Excellency, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to welcome you all to Bandung. On behalf of the organizer of the 12th Bandung International Conference on Language and Education, I would like to express my most sincere gratitude for your presence in this opening ceremony. We are especially thankful to plenary speakers who traveled from UK, Jakarta, Makassar, and Denpasar to Bandung to dignify and magnify our meetings today. The importance of motivation in successful language learning. However, motivation today is understood to be far from complex than the earlier extrinsic versus intrinsic distinction suggested. An essential element in motivation is the way in which the language learners perceive him or herself as a speaker of the target language. The theme has 6 sub-themes. First, making language classroom active. Second, language learners' autonomy and motivations. Third, autonomous language teachers. 4, technology and language learning. 5, multimodal literacy for successful language learning. And the last is measuring the impact of innovation in learning and teaching. This year, Bicole has 2 main sessions, conference and professional development workshop. The conference is in the 2 first day, and the last day is workshop sessions. For conference, we selected 95 of abstract out of 159 received abstracts. And there is 4 plenary sessions and 9 parallel sessions with 101 presenters. In workshop sessions, there are 4 sessions in different topics. We are pleased that as much as 180 are in attendance. In Bicole 12, we provide grant for selected presenters with outstanding abstracts to encourage participants, especially from young researchers and teachers, to be involved in this valuable event. To support this program, we create donation programs. Thank you for Pak Howard Coleman, who becomes our first individual donator. This shows his concerns on language education in Indonesia, as well as his love to this country. This time, there are 15 grants awardees, and hopefully, for the next conference, we can provide more grants. In addition, Bicole in the future will expand the focus that includes culture issues to open wider networking and contributions. We take this opportunity to thank the head of ITB Language Centers, Bapak Bambang, founding mother of this conference, Ibu Tins, senior and resourceful lecturers, Bapak Gumawan Jati, and ITB committee members, especially to Padana Waskita and Ibu Lucia Norani for their support, and thanks also belongs to the teams from BC or British Council and University of Leeds, as well as sponsors IBANK. May I wish you all informative and interesting conference. Thank you.
Terima kasih dan selamat pagi everybody. Great to be with you. How exciting to be at the 12th convening of Bicole, the Bandung International Conference on Language and Education. Being the 12th annual conference, it means Bicole enters its 25th quarter-centenary year. And I congratulate everybody involved in Bicole, and I particularly congratulate those eminent friends and colleagues here present today who were right in at the start of Bicole 24, 25 years ago. It's a great pleasure to be representing the British Council, to be involved with Bicole for so long, and to pay tribute to the many partners, but the two main partners we have so enjoyed sharing the delivery of these great conferences with, and that is of course the Institute of Technology Bandung ITB, and we thank them for this splendid venue, this particularly wonderful room, if I may say, and also our friends at the University of Leeds, one of the UK's leading universities, particularly in terms of language studies, linguistics, and so on. Let me immediately thank some individuals, that's what is right at the start of a conference like this. The Academic Director of ITB, Dr. Yuli Setio Indatono. I want to thank the Asia TEFL President, Professor Dr. Fuad Abul Hamid. I want to thank the Director of the ITB Language Centre, Dr. Bambang Supriyanto. I want to thank Dr. Tien Sudrajat, Boutines, and of course Dr. Coleman, who are founders of Bicole. And I want to thank Dr. Martin Lam from the University of Leeds. And I want to thank my colleague Ibu Anne Wiseman, who's also a plenary speaker, eventually. So, I think it's very exciting to be at a conference which focuses on not just English, but the languages of the world, particularly the language base of East Asia and of Indonesia. I think language and language delivery in Indonesia is an extraordinarily exciting country to consider these things. It's a country of such size, the fourth largest population in the world, and of such cultural distribution across the 9,000 populated islands that making language work for the nation, for the people, is an extraordinary opportunity, an extraordinary challenge. This is a country which still has literally hundreds of languages across the archipelago, and I hope every one of those languages will be nourished, cherished, and protected, whatever is happening in terms of world languages. If I may say, I'm no specialist, but it's an extraordinary success story in terms of the growth and use of Bahasa Indonesia, which though constituted of other languages was of course a created language to be politically appropriate at the foundation of Indonesia. Many of you will know that the fabricating, the creation of languages is not often a successful exercise, but it strikes me that the creation of Bahasa Indonesia over the past 70 years or so has been, or the delivery of Bahasa Indonesia to the whole nation, from Aceh to Papua, has been an extraordinary, powerful and successful enterprise which has worked with Pancasila and the great determination of this country to be one, to be collaborative and to be tolerant and pluralistic as behind the great success of Indonesia in the modern world. And so alongside the many indigenous languages, the successful growth of Bahasa Indonesia, so Indonesia now navigates its adoption, increasing adoption of world languages in the recognition that in the modern globalized world of 2018, all countries and all peoples who have professional, vocational determination and international outlook must accept that they must navigate their way through perhaps at least one, what we might call world languages. The world languages, Arabic, Mandarin, French, German, Spanish, and of course the one I am most committed to helping people navigate and understand, English. It's interesting when you think of the size of Indonesia and the use of English in the four largest countries in the world, the four largest populations in the world. United States, of course, is an English, primarily English-speaking country, though with an incredible growth in the use of other languages, particularly Hispanic. India, country I know well, a country I've lived in for 8 years, my wife is from India, a country in which not many people know it. English is the national official language of India, that second largest, maybe first largest population in the world. That again is a political decision, because any of the other many Indian languages, including Hindi or Gujarati or Tamil or so on, would be too politically specific to be the official language of that whole country. So the only language that is, in one respect, indigenously unpolitical is English, so English is the official language of India. And then China, that great power. I keep getting these facts wrong, but I think the fact that's top of my head is there are more people learning English in China today, literally today, than are speaking English in the rest of the world. And speaking English is their absolute first language. The growth in English studies in China is remarkable. So then we come to the fourth largest population and the challenge of the world languages, and particularly English, in Indonesia. And it is a challenge, it is an exciting challenge. But I think that the people of Indonesia, the government of Indonesia, is recognising more and more that a world language to use beyond the indigenous languages and beyond Bahasa Indonesia is exceptionally important for a country which is a G20 member, 16th largest economy in the world, and has determination within a certain period of time to be in the top 5 or 6 economies in the world. That's a very exciting socio-economic trajectory. But one of the things that must go with it is the capacity of professional people, people of vocational aspiration, to have amongst their tools and skills a language which enables them to reach out and work in an international environment. Certainly I and the British ambassador and the people at the embassy, as we move around Indonesia, and as we meet mayors and governors, as we meet rectors of universities and head teachers, and as we meet people in CEOs of businesses, and as we meet the people, more and more one of the first questions they ask us is, how can you British people help us with English skilling? I remember even when our ambassador Parmaza met JK, the vice president, most recently, he walked into the vice president's office, and the first thing the vice president said was, "Good morning, ambassador, how are you going to help us with English?" And that was a very interesting first response. Because I think what is recognised, if I may just talk about this one language, is that English long ago ceased to be geographically defined, territorial, belonging to England or anything like that. English has long since been liberated from any particular country or group of countries and has become a free-floating international world skill. People need a world language. I suggest English as much as they need the skills of self-management, the skills of IT, the skills of leadership and self-enterprise and so on. It is a 21st century core skill. There may be political reasons in the past why English became a world language, but today it has to be accepted, I think, innocently, that for good or ill, it is the primary language of the internet, it is the primary world language of business, it is the language of the professions, it is the language of international law. In many ways, it is the language of international diplomacy and international relations. And therefore, every country with socio-economic aspiration must have ambition to skill its young people, its kids now, generation, with this opportunity for the future. The British Council, my organisation, is the official agency from the United Kingdom for matters of education, civil society, human rights, culture, the arts, and many other important areas of intellectual and people-to-people engagement, and including, we are the official agency from the UK to take care of questions of language, language studies, language policy, and particularly around English. We have actually been in Indonesia for 70 years in 2018, and our first office was opened in Bandung, as I told friends last night, in 1948, so it's always great to be in Bandung, a great centre of education, higher education, particularly through this, it's an organised institution, and a great centre of culture and of creative industries. A centre which is very much about West Java, but which very much points its face into the wider world, not just in Indonesia, but worldwide. So, the British Council is determined to develop its support to government and to education systems, school systems, and particularly higher education and TVET systems, in all sorts of ways, but particularly in helping them with an appropriate language strategy and plan for its young people and students. President Jokowi himself has prioritised skills, employability, technical and vocational education as at the top of the ladder of important educational initiatives. And languages, appropriate languages for professional business use, which I would include English, therefore is a critical prioritised skill. British Council wants to help improve the quality of English language and teaching, obviously, across Indonesia. It would like to see an inclusive language policy across the country, across this extraordinarily distributed population across 9,000 populated islands. It wants to help with educational policy improvement, and we speak a lot with the senior people, including Minister Nasir at Ristek Dikti, about English in the higher education system, and perhaps English medium instruction in the higher education system as increasingly necessary, particularly for the teaching of certain postgraduate courses and for the underpinning of the research ambitions of the university sector. So we're into systems reform and teacher development. I want to conclude by talking just about one new product or service that the British Council is bringing to Indonesia, launching in a couple of months' time in September. It is really for generation now, kids zaman now, but actually this is a free offer to learn English, which we offer to every single member of the population of Indonesia, wherever they live. It uses British Council created products, online learning of English. There's a Learn English site for adults, there's a Learn English site for teenagers, there's a Learn English site for very young kids. There's a Teach English site, which should interest everybody in this room. A Teach English site where digitally on your laptop, on your mobile phone, you can get advice on teaching English, you can download suggested curricula, you can download a day's lesson plan. And there are also two great MOOCs. Many of you will know what a MOOC is. This is this great new online learning facility worldwide, which particularly centres in great houses in America and Europe. The two largest and most used MOOCs in the world are both designed by the British Council. One is about preparation for IELTS and another is a more general English learning course. And of course, like all MOOCs, they are also free for users. We are also talking with friends at various stations to introduce English by radio. Sounds old-fashioned, doesn't it? English by radio, we think it was sort of 50 years ago, but we all know that in the outer parts of this archipelago, radio, RRI and so on is still an absolute lifeline for people. And we hope to bring English by radio with British Council materials across Indonesia, again, of course, free of charge. We're also talking to various stations about the possibility of English by television, because the British Council with the BBC, the BC and the BBC, have worked together to create great television product. And we're also talking with certain media houses about English in your newspapers or in your magazines. So English by print, English by radio, English by television, but most importantly I think English by digital and by which you can also obviously get on your mobile phone and social media networks. So that when you're sitting in a traffic jam in Bandung for 2.5 hours, you've got something to do to improve your English. This is we call English for Indonesia. We think it's a very handsome offer. We think it's a very inclusive offer, where literally every or anybody in the country, of whatever age, can help improve their English online. And I'm pleased and a little bit proud to be able to say that we're bringing that to the people of Indonesia. So thank you very much. I wish you a great 2 or 3 days conference on this most important subject. This is not an academic conference, though we're going to hear some brilliant intellectual academic papers. The ultimate purpose of this kind of convening is to contribute to the socio-economic future of Indonesia. That's what language studies and policy needs to be about, not about clever linguistic discussions that happen in the lecture room. They're interesting too. But this is about the future of Indonesia and the future of every Indonesian. So I thank you very much for listening to me and I wish you a great conference.
Now, I would like to invite Pak Martin Len, the representative from the University of Leeds, for a welcome address.
Good morning, everyone, and particularly I'd like to welcome respected colleagues from ITB, from UPI, from the British Council, from Unja in Jambi, from all over the archipelago. I know that there are people who have travelled here a long way. The School of Education at the University of Leeds is very proud to be associated with this series of conferences. This is now the 12th Bicole conference. These between Leeds, ITB, and the British Council back in the late 1980s, before many of you were born, I believe, looking around. But at that time, I was working at Gajah Mada University in Yogyakarta, actually, and one of the happiest times of my life, I think, at that time. So coming back to these conferences always brings back a lot of happy memories for me. At that time, the British Council were already working with local institutions to try to improve English language teaching in universities and in government organisations, and that's what I was doing in Gajah Mada. At that time, we also had someone from the British Council working at ITB, and they were working with Ibu Din, who's here today, and Pat Bambang, and Pat Jati. Pat Jati, I should point out, was my Bahasa Indonesia teacher when I first arrived in Indonesia in 1984. Also at that time, Howard Coleman was working at Leeds, having worked in Indonesia for decades. He had moved to Leeds and been working at University of Leeds. And Anne Wiseman, who is another of our plenary speakers, was also at Leeds at that time. So actually this is a kind of joyful reunion for us of the older generation. This 12th conference, I think, will be particularly interesting for us because of one of the themes of the conference is to look back at those early projects and to see what kind of impact they had. Did they achieve what they set out to do? Did they have any significant side effects? Were they ultimately value for money? I think it's rare in our field, actually, to ask these kind of questions. We tend to work hard to try to get a project, and then we do it, and then we move on to the next one. It's very rare that we actually look back and consider, years later, decades later, what actually was the benefit, if any. And as the British Council is now planning on new projects, continues to plan new projects, it's important that we can learn from the projects that went before to design what we do in the future. However, like all the Bicole conferences, there will be presentations on many different topics. And what they will have in common is quality, because we know that the Bicole organisers always choose the papers that are presented here very carefully, and there's a rigorous selection procedure based on quality and originality. And for me, Bicole, I try to get to Bicole whenever I can. I've been to about half of the 12 Bicole conferences. For me, it's a wonderful opportunity to catch up with what is happening in Indonesia in the field of English language teaching. And to learn about new methods, new approaches, and new techniques that are being put into effect. So on behalf of myself and on behalf of the University of Leeds, I'd like to thank the organisers of this year's conference, and in particular Dr. Untari Gunter-Kardiwi, who's worked tremendously hard over the last year to put this event on. And I'd like to also thank the British Council in Jakarta for their continuing support for the conference. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the conference, and I'm sure you're looking forward to it as much as I am. Thank you very much.
I would like to invite Professor Dr. Fuad Hamid, the President of Asia TEFL, for the opening remarks.
Very good morning to every one of you, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. sebenarnya saya bisa berbahasa Indonesia, tapi saat ini saya akan berbicara dalam bahasa Inggris. Bapak Rektor yang saya hormati, represented by Pak Yuli Stio in Dartono, who is the Director for Education at ITB, the British Council Director, Paul Smith, representative from University of Leeds, Martin Lam. Hi, welcome. Are you representing Jakarta Selatan or something? All conference participants, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, I am indeed very happy to be here, and this is my second time to be at Bicole, because at one point in time, almost 20 years ago, I was one of the plenary speakers in this conference at that time, when I was still very young. And of course, congratulations to ITB, specifically to the Language Center of ITB, which has consistently and seriously hold this conference annually. Is it biannually, or sometimes the word biannual means twice in a year, but this one is once in every 2 years. Holding this kind of activity is not an easy task. Of course, Bu Tari must have been working very hard. We can tell from the way she stood here in the minbar. Should actually be understood in a somewhat different way. That is, we need to create a new way of looking into the role that we have to play in the classroom when facing the millennials. Again, if you take a look at the term the millennials, generally refers to the generation of people born in the early 1980s or 1990s. Even some people would include children born in the early 2000s. The millennial generation, you mentioned Generation Y as a replacement to Generation X. But of course now we are entering to face Generation Z. And basically the terms millennials mean basically the same. Millennials have been characterized in a number of ways. For some people, millennials would be looked at as basically a generation which try to adapt very quickly to the world undergoing rapid technological change.
I would like to invite Dr. Yuli Stio to give a speech on behalf of the Rector of ITB.
Honorable guest, British Council Director, Mr. Paul Smith, University of Leeds representation, Dr. Martin Lam, Asia Development President, Professor Dr. Fuad Abdul Hamid, founder of Bicole, Mr. Haimel, comment, thank you for coming, from University of Leeds also, and Ibu Tin Sudrajat, the founding mothers,
of this Bicole conference, and of course the director of ITB Language Center, Pak Bambang Supriyanto, and also Mr. Moderators, Professor Ismunandar, Professor Hendra Gunawan, and Dr. Bana Kartasasmita. Thank you for joining this conference. Bu Utari, as a coordinator, I think, for this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to inform that Rector of ITB, Professor Kadra Suryadi, was very sorry he cannot attend this important agenda because at the same time he must visit his study program. There is a ceremony because one of our college passed away last week, Dr. Arisa Madi. So I'm sorry, Rector of ITB cannot join this important meeting. It gives me immense pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to all of you to our University Institute Teknologi Bandung. We are in the historical building, Pak Paul Smith. This is the East Hall, and at that side there is a West Hall of ITB, planned in 1918 by Dutch architect, and then built in 1990, and first used in 1920. So next 2 years, in 2020, this building is the 100th years, like ITB. So we are happy to have important meeting in this historical building, heritage building of Indonesia also. The first president of Indonesia, Engineer Soekarno, also studied in this building also. Ladies and gentlemen, ITB is an institute of science, technology, and arts, and has a vision to be a world-class university. In achieving this goal, ITB realized that language, especially foreign language, provide language center in 1990s to cater language programs for students to master foreign language. Language teaching and learning, particularly that of foreign language, at ITB has developed very rapid and 2 study programs in pharmacy. So right now we have 6 international classes teach with English for the main language. Along with this, since 2016, other foreign language classes such as French, Japanese, and German are also offered as elective subjects. And in coming year, it will be enriched with another language such as Mandarin and Korean. Flat and fluid word, I would say nowadays is our world is flat and also fluid, require high mobility of human resources. Foreign language capability, of course, one of the important foreign languages, English, is must for such a world. Formal foreign language class, maybe 2 credits or 3 credits, usually teach in a university or in a school, maybe not enough to develop fluent foreign language capability. That's why, in my opinion, university and school must think out of the box, developing new ways, new method for language training. Based on alumni pressure study regularly run by ITB, it is concluded that ITB students think foreign language class teach in this university is not enough for them. This based on the quantitative data. That's why the student look for other resources outside the campus, maybe with the private learning or self-learning, etc. In these particular topics, I absolutely agree with the title of this conference, Active and Autonomous Learning for Millennial Generation. ITB finds that the topic of this conference very relevant to the current condition in Indonesia. We need human resources who are fluent in foreign language, especially in English, and those who master ICT, so that Indonesia will play important roles in the economic community in particular, and in the international forum in general. On behalf of Pak Rektor ITB, I am officially open this conference. Thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Three-day conference held here at Aula Timur or the East Hall of ITB, Language Center ITB, CADL Building, and the Auditorium of School of Business and Management, SBM ITB. This time we will have 4 plenary sessions, 2 plenary workshops, 1 poster session, and 15 parallel sessions. And there is a press conference, please be reminded, for the IC. So we are looking forward to a very interesting 3 days. Ladies and gentlemen, before we have our coffee break, I would kindly ask for your attention on these announcements. The first information is on City Tour. The City Tour for presenters and participants will be held on the last day of the conference after closing at 3 p.m. Participants will be limited to 95 people. It is on a first-come, first-served basis, so it is a good idea to register soon. For more details, please contact the committee at the information and registration desk. We have a social media challenge that you can participate in on Instagram and FB. Prizes will be announced on the last day. Also, there is a link that you can download on conference schedule for Android and iOS. Search for Bicole 12 or Bicole 12 in search events. It will be on the screen. Next, for any inquiries at all, please contact the committee at the information and registration desk at the entrance. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have a 15-minute coffee break, and you are kindly invited back to this main hall at 10 sharp for our first plenary session with a presentation from Pak Martin Lam. We appreciate your punctuality. Thank you.
Substance of our conference, and but I joined the speakers before the session. Welcome to the distinguished guests from England, from the United British Council of Indonesia, and the participants from all over Indonesia. Yes, thank you. We will start the presentation today from Dr. Martin Lam, and he wrote his CV as a personal statement. So, Pak Martin has been in Leeds at Leeds University since 1999, having previously spent 16 years working abroad. As a BSO English teacher in Sulawesi, as you know, we have a guest from Makassar. Yes. And then as teacher and teacher trainer on various British Council managed ELT projects in Indonesia and Bulgaria. He has also taught EFL in Sweden and in Saudi Arabia. For the last 10 years at Leeds, Dr. Martin was heavily involved in the department's work in Oman, a large-scale BA program for Omani teachers of English that ran from 1999 to 2009. That's across the century. And an MA TESOL run in cooperation with Majan, from 2008 to 2010. Correct, at the changing of centuries. Yes. Since then, Pak Martin has been the program leader of the MA TESOL studies, the MA TESOL, and now is leading the MA TESOL program in China in association with Guangdong University of Foreign Studies in Guangzhou. He is at present the head of international education in the school, helping to establish teaching and research collaborations with overseas institutions, and also responsible for incoming and outgoing study abroad students. I think this is particularly interesting. I hope that some of the participants can be in the program. He has a PhD from Leeds, his MA that's from Lancaster, and as a diploma of teaching English from RSA Delta. So we are very lucky we have a person of authority on the subject he's speaking and of experience of having been everywhere, sharing his expertise. So I present to you Dr. Martin.
Thank you very much, Pak, for that kind introduction. I'll start here, but I may decide I want to move around with my microphone, so we'll see how we go. This talk, actually, my presentation has its origins in Bicole 11, 2 years ago, when I was here, and listening to many fascinating presentations about the use of technology in language learning and teaching in Indonesia. And I was genuinely amazed by the kind of things that I was hearing about Generation Z, about all these apps that I'd never heard of. It did make me feel very old, I have to admit, but I was amazed, and it made me reflect on many of the things that I believed about language learning and teaching, and about how things are changing, not just in Indonesia, but in England and in other countries around the world. And in particular, it made me think about motivation, which is my academic topic of interest and what I've been researching and reading about over the last 20 years. And how technology affects people's motivation to learn English. So that's what my talk is about today. And Indonesia is a particularly interesting site for this, for questions about technology and motivation, I think, because as we know, Indonesia is very advanced, actually. Young people in Indonesia are among pioneers in the use of social media and in digital technology. Here are just some figures that's probably already out of date. I think I got them a year ago. They're probably already out of date. But this one in particular is striking, by a Japanese researcher, Horiguchi. She said, she was right, this is a 2017 article, but probably research was 2015 or 16. And she said that 99%, so almost all the high school pupils she researched, owned a mobile phone, and that they spent an average of 3 hours, 20 minutes online a day on their mobile phone. This is even more than my own daughter. Seems incredible, if true. But anyway, Indonesia is very active. Indonesian young people are very active in social media and the use of smartphones to get online and do various things. They're also generally very highly motivated to learn English. At least they say they are. How does this technology affect their motivation? That's my question today. CAL, computer-assisted language learning. And traditionally, it's been discussed as happening in the classroom. So how do teachers use technology to assist their teaching? But increasingly, it's recognised that CAL has applications outside the classroom. So there are now two distinct fields, really: CAL in the classroom and CAL outside the classroom. CAL, and my main topic today is actually CAL outside the classroom. But then how does that affect what happens in the classroom? And of course there are many, as we will see, there are many types of CAL that can happen beyond the classroom. And evidence is accumulating that a major shift is underway in how second language development is taking place. Increasingly among young people, that process is occurring outside of institutional settings, predominantly through the use of online networks and media. Recent books that have appeared, Language Learning Beyond the Classroom, Beyond the Language Classroom, attest to this interest in what is happening in the world of English language teaching. It's happening not just in classrooms, but outside the classroom. And now there is even a new acronym that has been coined to describe this learning. OILI, I think we pronounce it. So, the online informal learning of English. A process driven by the intention to communicate, with language learning being only a byproduct of this communication. However, I should point out that it's not always online, actually. I mean, we could include in this watching television, perhaps, although increasingly people watch television not on television, but on their phones or on laptops or tablets. It's not always informal. I mean, there are degrees of formality. So, for example, a teacher might ask a class of learners to do something outside class, and they choose when they do it and where they do it. So that's informal. But on the other hand, it's formal because it is actually part of a curriculum syllabus. So formality is a continuum. And actually, it's not really, well, it may be learning, but it may also be acquisition. We know that very common distinction, in that the language learning may be a byproduct. They may not be actually consciously learning language, but they pick up language as they go along. So they're acquiring it. So, how does all this OILI affect learners' motivation to learn English in formal settings, in school or university? That's my main question that I'm raising today. you might expect that it would generally have a positive effect. So we know there is a lot of research showing that CAL generally does promote learner motivation. So if a teacher is using technology in the class, then as long as it's used appropriately, then learners tend to like that. They develop the positive attitude towards it. And that goes beyond just the novelty effect. So it's not, if the teacher brings some new technology in or uses some new app, there's bound to be interest initially. But generally, the research suggests that if it's used well, technology does motivate learners beyond the novelty effect. It's also the fact that if learners are becoming familiar with English outside the classroom, then that can make them feel confident. I'll just let you read this, the quotation here. Expects if the oily people, young people using English or even learning English outside of class in their own private lives would have a positive effect on their motivation to learn English in class. However, some scholars recently have pointed out that actually it could have a negative effect. So Kalaja et al. From writing in Finland. This is Alistair Henry writing from Sweden. Sorry, this is really... Okay, sorry, I'll have to read this out. I usually choose font size 24. Next time I'll review it. We also, the motivation scale also had 27 items, like the Likert scale, and we had 5 scales. So very briefly, the first one was motivated learning behaviour, which was the kind of criterion measure. So how much effort do you put into learning English? Then there was the ideal self, the ideal L2 self, which is a common motivation construct these days, which researchers are using. The ideal self is how you see yourself in the future. So, do you see yourself as someone in the future who's going to be fluent in English? The ought to self, similar to that, is how you think you should be in the future, or how other people think you should be. So, for example, do your parents think that you should be fluent in English in the future? Attitudes to formal English classes, so how much do you like learning English in the university, for example? And then finally, self-assessment of proficiency. How easily can you read texts in English online? How confident do you feel having a conversation in English? That kind of item. So, before I present the results, I'm just going to pause for a minute and ask you, I'd like you to just discuss with your neighbour for a moment. If you don't know them, introduce yourself. And I'd just like you to try and guess, what do you think was the response? What kind of online activities do you think Jakartan students do with English or in English? Okay, just a couple of minutes, let you try to discuss that.
WhatsApp, for example, and some of them doing other project, or I use internet for doing a project because my school give them say project research, for example, from the small to the middle. I as a teacher sometimes give them order to open the class email.
Okay, I thank you very much. So I'm interested particularly in what your students do
in English, and I saw that they speak with their friends, virtual friends from every part of the world, and they speak English advanced, rather than us. And sometimes they ask me, what is the meaning of this? And I don't know, because of course the world is very different with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. So.
Okay, thank you for the questions. First, could we have confirmations to the students here? School students or university students? Any students? Okay. Yeah. We think that online activities, Jakarta students are chatting with the people, chatting with using Instagram or Facebook. They are also playing online games and trying to comprehend the text written in English to enrich their vocabulary.
So, I'll just show you the top 10 activities. We did find very high levels of oiling, but also very high levels of motivation. But these are the top 10 activities. Am I going to have to read them out? No. Can you see them? Can you read them?
Not exactly.
So you'll see that on a scale of 1 to 6, these are the mean scores. You can see this is very, very high. So almost everyone listens to English language songs and reads English songs, the lyrics as well, which of course are so easy to get a hold of these days. Very different from when I was teaching English in Indonesia in the 1980s, when I remember I had to actually listen to songs myself and then type out the lyrics in order to teach them, which was a very difficult task. But yeah, number 3, so songs, the top 2, then digital games, watching YouTube videos, exactly as you said, Pat Massigo. Foreign films, internet, so this is learning about English on the internet. Using English for social media language settings, reading websites, as you said there, and watching TV shows and so on. So what we see here, actually, our research does confirm results from other contexts. In France, Austria and Hong Kong, recent articles suggest that the most popular activities tend to be entertainment-oriented or self-instruction oriented. And these are actually more popular than social media, than socially oriented activities, which is interesting. So, although there are some students, like your students, Boo, who are chatting online with international friends, we find that actually there is some reluctance among young people to learn to use English in this way, to use English with native speakers, or with other international speakers of English, or indeed to use English with other Indonesians. And when we asked our interviewees about this, what is it? People who are very active with oiling, do lots of things with English, but are still reluctant to actually use English spontaneously in spontaneous communication. They talked about they raised 2 problems, which maybe you'll recognize. Firstly, it's risky when using English online, because you might, it's kind of public, and you might make mistakes, and therefore, you feel that you lose face because you're making mistakes. And the second point was about the fact that when using English online, you know, there is it's somehow with other Indonesians, it's somehow inauthentic. They prefer to use Indonesian with other Indonesians, and usually it's only just one or two relatives or friends that they'll use English with socially. So very kind of trusted relation within the context of a trusted relationship. So, definitely the most popular activities were entertainment-oriented and instruction-oriented, self-instruction. There were some odd things mentioned in the survey. Curhat dalam bahasa Inggris, menuliskan curahan hati. I had to look up these words. I didn't know what they meant. And these words, I don't know, is this English? I mean, whining is English, but whining? That's the kind of thing my daughter does when she doesn't want to eat her vegetables or something. Fangirling? I don't know, can anyone tell me what fangirling is? You know? Curhat, I understand means kind of venting, or sort of, kind of just, venting one's feelings. Anyway, this was just a minority, just one or two people who mentioned these things. Okay, just something about the motivation. As I always find, whenever I give questionnaires to Indonesian students, they respond very positively. You know, they always seem to respond with a very high level of motivation. And this was no exception. So again, very high means here. Very high mean for the ideal L2 self, which suggests that these young people, these young Jakartans, they really did have visions of themselves in the future being fluent in English. Is that me? It's buzzing. But generally, as you can see, generally very high scores on motivation. One or two interesting significant differences. Found that, of course, no surprise, the female students were more motivated than the males. And we found that the university students had a higher level of oily than the language centre students. That is probably because of age. So the university students were younger than the language centre students on average. And so the younger people were doing more oily than the older students. But the language centre people had slightly more positive attitudes to language learning and said that they put more effort into learning English. Again, no surprise, because they were the ones who volunteered to use English, to learn English. Whereas the university students, they were compulsory. Right, now our real interest was, what's the relationship between their motivation, their level of oily, then how much they were using English online, and their attitudes to studying in the classroom. And we found, well, generally if you combine all the results and get an average figure, the correlation was 0.158. So, significant but moderate positive correlation. Those who do more activities outside tend to have more positive attitudes. However, this disguises actually a very wide variance. And this is the problem with traditional statistics, is that it's always generalizations, it's always just averages. And those averages might disguise very significant differences among individuals. And just to give you a sense of how through those for our results, we did cluster analysis, which is a statistical technique. And this is a scattergram plotting every respondent's, 308 respondents' results on the scale of attitudes to classroom learning, 1 to 6, and outside class use of English, so they're oily. So this is how active they were overall in oily, and this is their negative to positive attitudes. And you can see how diverse they are, actually, in reality. And these are the purple ones are the people who have very high level of oily and very positive attitudes to class. So those are our ideal students in a way. Very active outside and eager to learn inside. These though, these are the ones who have low level of oily and less positive attitudes to class. But these are the people who, in a way, we are most interested in, the blue dots, because those are the people with a very high level of oily, but negative attitudes to class. So this shows that there are people